I'd like to thank all of you for coming on this rare rainy night in California. My name is John Kieschnick. I'm one of the co-directors for the Ho Center for Buddhist Studies. And today, on behalf of the Ho Center for Buddhist Studies, it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Khenpo Sodargye Rinpoche. As most of you in this room know, the Khenpo has for years traveled throughout China, speaking often, both for devotees and at many Chinese universities. He accepted his first Chinese disciples back in 1987 on Wu Taishan, and as I just learned, speaks Chinese fluently. All of this makes him uniquely qualified to speak on an important topic about which I'm embarrassed to say, as a specialist in Chinese Buddhism, I really know very little about, and that is the popularity of Tibetan Buddhism in China today. Khenpo will speak today in Tibetan, and his speech will be translated by a team of 2 different translators. So please join me in welcoming him to the podium.
Jamba Sodam Yamda Garis Janok Yerkum de la Tane Wugina Tung Tamba Nitzirk Kurk Tanirka Changas Shotungush. The Inena Tandistavi Kushku Shungala, the Girkin Soda, Nambatsola, Tomer, Tanip Gajanchi, Jigian.
I'm very honored to be here this evening to have an opportunity to speak on the subject of the spread of Tibetan Buddhism in modern China. And first of all, I would like to thank the professors and those of you for giving me the opportunity to come here. Thank you very much.
Tani yanrangs ngorsong. Tani yang lo mongs garanga tani tar yanak yerda chi chuchit chi kala kansam shade na ta chuchit shat jita yang chi yin mapche de chi takbar yin da nyere jin da chuchit lanre da ta chi musur ga chi lamga hanru sunru re ta chi musur ga ne tse ma to yin da yang da chuchit shat jite ngarang chi rangoni na hajang Semugapoyo, the Indi Tariga, Talomons Gorsonge. Talomons Gorsona, Tandi Yerum Gachot, Chiranga, Cassanteranga, Wogik Naftan, the Tansan, Janana Hachang, Chitarchip Chevas, Dana, Chishmunda, Manjavaga, Tanichi, Narjan Soyana Draga, Shion Batsoyana Draga, Ha Lebag Mombos the Tani. Tarta chula tamkanda, chu lojon shimkanda, chu nyamlen shimkan, de jig nyenre de yara jemangsen rogo yo badana. Da rankar ge jig zhang yara mangwa zamyang mayan ba ge jig chat tombo, jig chulu ge nangdong ge jig xiong ge chat de yang jig da haleba ge jig tombo yo ya ka samji go, denis da tsir da dimos yo.
And for myself, I've been a student of Buddhism, and of course I've been teaching also to the Chinese community for some 30 years, which is a very long time, considering that this has been occurring almost on a daily basis, at least one Dharma session per day, except for very special occasions when I have to go elsewhere to give teaching or lectures, but for the most part, I spend most of my time in this pursuit of teaching Tibetan Buddhism to the Chinese people. And so this is definitely an area that I have a lot of experience in. And I have to say that these days in modern China, there is a great interest in the study of Tibetan Buddhism. It is extremely popular. It's popular among the academics. It's popular among the lay community in general. And so from the point of view of pedagogy, this is something that is increasing year by year, the general education of Buddhist Dharma. And that means all aspects of it, the inner meaning, the tradition of it, and so forth. And we expect that this will continue to increase.
다 shirna tangsanga dirab the jig janap zigimik tani sacha jig nabshog yan jaga mamang chewaz ko jig nang sem go tappa dang na nang go jig da shion the su tada thona chenbo mashide tani jig hwarjur da jig shu ngubo go jig targi 다지 고르모 있는 자가 잘라가 있는 자가 너수다다 할게 그 지금 통칭시 기록 니 말을 해진다는 그 뒤수 청마다는 뒤쇼스 어떤 거 요지 뒤럽 저 무스르 잔다서도 이렇게 요지는 청마가 차가 샤르로는 생거 뭐 청마가 되나 양지 난 샘그 대와 냠섬 용도도 고모 슈르고 우보고 쳇다 드니 지금 년 마다름 찬 먹니 같이 가려면 뭐 저도 야대다는 때니 샘직 제르와 잔다는 샘직 섭섭보는 거 기려고 다직 뒤로 무스르 잔다서 여려노도 참에 고요래.
And we find that in China also here in Western countries and in most places around the world that this is not necessarily a time where people are emphasizing inner spiritual development as much as they are emphasizing material prosperity. Humanity is inclined to spend most of their time, day in and day out, in the pursuit of happiness from external sources. And it's very rare to find anyone who is really interested in dedicating their life to the pursuit of inner happiness by discovering the nature of their own mind. And so this is what we're facing in terms of modernity, the emphasis upon a material development, which seems to be overwhelmingly popular.
다 옛날 당상의 뭐멍보스가 드니 나추 나상기비 저거나 상기비 출릉의 지금 냠슬랑에다나 그런 수 소위 초도 지금 대화 퍼슴 속바서 냠슴 연구요도 못습니다. 따띠 능기 가수 파르치아즈 그 산기 출력제인데기도 지금 여보도 고요서 말해. 가래가 제나 페르나 지금 파르크 침보 장에 있는 자가 곰바 지 하정 즈보 된다 곰바 즈보 ям니 있는 자가 만에 지금 시험 사지 거라 쉬기 단도 소산기 출력 조어레젠다. 대 산기 출력 그 차시즈래. 산기 출력 조 말해.
And also there is the notion these days that when you speak of Buddhism, this is not necessarily the emphasis of contemplative practice, but that rather this is involved with the building of monasteries and the construction of statues or images of Buddha, and the outer acts of devotion such as circumambulation, prostration, the making of offerings, and so forth, and that these acts of devotion would constitute being the main emphasis of the Buddhist path. But that is not at all the case. Those are aspects of Buddha Dharma, but they are certainly not the main emphasis of the path of Buddha's teachings, which is meant to inspire the human being to understand the nature of fully qualified happiness.
산기 출력제기도 그거 득바지양 못샤죠. 개와 벗음 소바죠. 랑거샘의 용선. 너는 산기 담바연제 랑당 젠나 판바시키포 팀야 개와젠. 또 접지당. 랑당 젠나 노파시키크 샤와강당 까이나 델라 득바젠. 대 하른 노르지. 더니 랑거샘데 지금 다 마롱와가 회나 제당다나 대신도는 지금 출쯧 지금 잠만자가 또 똑방안 바고 왕도 먼저이 샘데모 께보고 늑탑기고 다 디모가 시샤 저거나 자가 디모가 록소즈가 록소 바즈감냐마 다 산기가 담바 산기가 출력제기도 다 운전사도 tani lo nirtong ngagyal hakanena teyin ze saro she yore.
And so clearly, to understand the tradition of Buddha Dharma, we would look at one of the famous quotes in the sutras, which states, "Do not engage in any negativity. Cultivate an abundance of goodness. Tame your mind thoroughly. That is the doctrine of the Buddha." And so this indicates to us that the principal emphasis of Buddha's doctrine is precisely that, and the instructions on how that thorough taming of the mind is able to be accomplished by means of accomplishing the causes for wholesome goodness or virtuous karma for self and others, and discarding the causes for unwholesome negative karmic accumulations as it pertains to self and others. For example, uprooting an angry mind, negative concepts that are surging and overcoming one's mind, causing one to engage unnecessarily. And so understanding how it is that these pitfalls can be identified, and then turning more towards the direction of knowledge and education, and that which accumulates wholesome deeds. And that has, in fact, been the emphasis of Buddha Dharma for the last 2,500 years that it's been here on this planet.
다 산지가 출력 되나요? 대 출력 공속 도나요? 초래. 레다 쪼도 너 녜테나다리 락소르 바즈레. 치레제나 산지 출력디 나가 드니 다지어 남르 바이난 자가 사컴르 바이난 자가 대전도는 어수 시샤 몽보 적다는 요래. 띠라 때니는 드니 가수 미 시가데 제브선선 조가다. 미 런탄장게 시샤 몽보 적다 ku lojon shena chokyo래. 다 때인디 출력이야 연라 락소르바야 연바데 다리 산지 출력되나 chokre sam거.
Hence, with that in mind, as the main tradition of Buddha Dharma being that notion of understanding positive versus negative, then it doesn't mean that one just only believes in an external figure such as a god, or only focuses upon prayer or something that would lead in that kind of external direction. But that rather one must develop one's inner knowledge in the same way that science develops and understands the nature of space, understands the nature of the earth. Buddhism would develop the knowledge of understanding the value of being a human being, and to be educated in terms of that understanding.
산지 줄글라 예네나 다 콩만 방가레 야나qa geparlo jongshena xiangkit xiangshukni gepatin sare tene yang de dangare de lorjit loshuk tene nyarang go chukso tomba tene loshuk gepayo sare tene hoina ta woyerni gepa wogit wogik chuluyore 강당 강이나 주 추데라 짐직다 로종 시기 르직다나 추인데 냐는 시기르니 르직 때니까 나만 늦어요래 때니 가마 야거나 뜨금 kre바 쳔보 로공 이니 다 콩고 측송 접제나 스톰부 담추 남니데 롱당 똑부 다니지 덴진 쉐바 마쉐바 드브르 쉐바 코나오제 치레제나 상지가 추데라 짐직 시 로종 시기요 롱거 출란 천년 시기요 단 차바다 냠바 역직다나 드니 스톡비 출란 냠는 시기 랑거 샘는 거 스톡반도 여러 공동 필요할 시기 냠는 시기 되니까 연세래 되니나 당아추 게르겐난 자가 괴바초이나 뭐마 상지 출란 되네 지금 내가 지 짐직 시르고니나 지도 짐직이 시르고다 니시 타크 냠는 깔아간서 뭐 고고삼고요.
In terms of Buddhism having developed in China over the centuries, it comes from, the source of the doctrine comes from various directions in the country. such as the lineages that are derived from the northern regions, from the south, from the direction of Tibet, and so forth. Whatever the case may be, the main emphasis for these lineages of Buddha's doctrine in China has been, according to one of the famous quotes by the great master Vasubandhu, who said, the doctrine of Buddha has two aspects, scriptural transmission and realization. Those who uphold teachings and spread them are connecting with the first category of scriptural transmission. And those who are becoming meditators and who are engaging in meditative contemplation are connecting with the aspect of realization. And so when we think about this, it indicates that there must be the emphasis of scriptural transmission, of learning the Buddha's doctrine, analyzing, researching, reaching one's own decision through study, contemplation, so that one can form one's own view and one's own philosophy concerning how one understands the doctrine. And so whether one is a teacher or a scholar or a simple practitioner, then one must approach the learning of the Buddha's doctrine by relying upon the scriptures, the source of the teachings, and studying them, coming to know them well. And that would be followed by meditative contemplation in order to realize the inner meaning of them.
Tang Sangwang the China, Chuban Garega, Jean Luc Tusum Dana, Jimjig Machine or Topkanena, then a Chu Yamlin Gunayang, the Jean Luc Machiki, the Yaha Yonsa Mare Samko. The Nayan Jimjig Bangarega, Chu de la Yamlin Mashi Bittingane, the Ne Chu Nandun Dana, Chu Trova, they took Yang Tabaz and Yamsum Yongone, Hajan Kaore. Then Jig. Jimji Konaga Shokse Malhonda. Yamlin Konaga Shokse Malhoni, Jonluk Dan, Laglin, Nika, Zongir, Nyamjir Shikid, Netena, Hachankar Chimboru Samgo.
I think it's very important to take note of these two aspects, especially these days, and understand how they go hand in hand. The doctrine of the Buddha has two aspects, as this master said. Because engaging in the tradition of Buddhist practice or education does not just mean to engage in contemplative meditation without any research or understanding of the process that leads you there, nor does it mean only engaging in the research and never understanding the contemplative practice or tasting the flavor of what that brings to one's understanding, which is the way of coming to know the inner meaning or the realization of the teachings. So there has to be both of these working harmoniously together in an inseparable or non-dual way. I feel this is a very important, crucial point.
Tang Nishkup, Nicher, Lorgi, on the Shena, Perna, Lord Trikchevadon, Tab Duncheva, Tir Nishkumna, Tene, Ta Lorgila, and Gera Chimbon, Diok, and Gera Chimbon, Shonore. They showed in Atu, work on Queba Mombos, Tene, Shishoko, Sacha, Tat Yagar, America, Tevision, Ta Europe, Shore, Tene, Sacha Mons, and Road Get to Sonre. Tene, Kun number 2 in that this Tavir Nitzer Gurdo, Katsam Mambo Muna, Taron, Slojung, Mercury Gitana. Teniji Chula Tene, Tener Jambaga, Murray Jambatana, Yarko Jambaga Mutsola, Kalakansam, Panto Jaga, Tene, Machek injecting a Huiz, King and Truxikir, Zikisgonje. That the Tsun Java Jangana, Dansan, Sacha Tariga, Tanzamolong Sacha Soso Nayan. Chuluk Slopcha, Gomba, Division the Chuso, that Timo Mombos, the Yara Tuktabkidana, Tene, nafshukdana kharshukka yang mambozuka tani na wogi nangtanga chulingde tsoyna khung nambe gilun shongyedana hlojong shigi kurkbyang hajan yawozga tongyorre.
In the 50s and 60s, due to the changing circumstances in the Chinese culture, which was also affecting life in Tibet at that time, many of the great scholars and masters of the Tibetan tradition, as you know, were forced to become refugees in Western countries, first going out, spilling out into India, and eventually making their way out into Western continents, America, Europe, and so forth. And although they underwent many difficulties during this changing time, for the most part, these masters never lost their enthusiasm or their spiritual training or their commitment to be of benefit to humanity in whatever way was deemed necessary. And so it became what we say, there's a well-known proverb in Tibetan, adversity to the path. Adversity becomes the path of practice. It became this kind of an experience for them, that they turned it into a positive circumstance, which then enhances their capacity even more. And therefore, they were able to establish Dharma centers, as they're referred to, or monasteries, or scholastic colleges, places to learn and practice the Buddhist tradition around the world. And so that process began and has continued to the present day, not only just in Western countries, but also in Eastern countries, giving people around the world an opportunity to learn and practice Tibetan Buddhism.
Tar kaptena nga tsu nanglok na yo ni poyer kum kheba tso yin na chi ngongsir ga hlojong shi ki dan hlopchi shi ki ga kurkub yang chi ga yahaz yo na mare re ta na tani kheba mambo z ga korong tsu yin de ta hlojong shi ki ote ta cham je yo na mare wer na ngarang ga gergen tani khambon jigme phun chok khong zhe jin jang na ta lo parchir lo nishi ar mar z ga ranga tani shitsog hlojong shi ki ga ji gomba dan devjin de hlopcha la sokba ga ji tab de bo yo mare ta yinna yang tsu jole jangle lerka kangdang kang she ne nan ja ta hwer nam jole yinna rzig jora rzig yo ikron di da ta khong ga nyezir na yo ni tani ta mombo ga chuchat shat na Perna nima gara ina tene ji sapuk na ina ja chapuk na ina manetari xiang ta naxer ta nimu gna ga ne de mangare ga soab ge mangare tene nyam de lojong shi na jong mambo z de tene lojong shi tene chammo ner kem na ya jomme go ta na tene tari nyam de lojong shi ge da na lobchi shi ge ta ne gin ma chi pa sonje de jima ta lor ge chi bi ner kem na tani ji chulu xar ka ji chabjig shi yo ga ji korku shon cherondi ta ngsu yin na da khasna derang ga tani khung ga son jore larong gar ndso yin na tani xar da marnak sur kyong shi murgu na ga ta lor nishi zamz ga ranga tani khambo hajang mo zg da tani sur kyong shi da na girgin chi mambo zg da na thoma ni da na tani ta perna chabjig shi na ta yong da yo ji ga ta ne tsir dimo ngune shon yon re.
And simultaneously, while this was happening, then within Tibet, the opportunity was not so great, as of course you can imagine, but there were many scholars and dedicated practitioners who were left behind, who actually never gave up their studies either during all these years when Dharma was not permitted to be practiced or studied in an open way at all. And so, for example, my teacher, Khenpo Jigpun Rinpoche, he would actively teach to disciples, to about some 20 of these great masters who were his disciples, and would continue to teach and train them in secrecy. They were all shepherds, and so They would go out in the guise of herding the animals, and when no one was looking, for example, they would then cloister and go into caves or into the woods, and he would continue to teach them and instruct them in a hidden way. And then they would go off, even if they had jobs during the day where they had to go and work for the Chinese government, they would go back home at night, or if they were farmers, they would go back home or to wherever they were staying at night. And under the light of a candle or an incense burning, they would secretly study the material that he had taught them in the day. And so this went on as a process of the continuity of their education up until the 1980s, when once again things became more flexible and they were allowed to congregate and begin to study Dharma in a more open fashion. And it was right around that time, as it was mentioned, that this Larung Gar, this great monastic institution for the 5 sciences, founded by my teacher, Khenpo Jigphun Rinpoche, was instigated. And he already had the trainees, the educators, who were these masters who had been studying under him for all those years. And so there was no need to retrain new educators. The process was already in place, and they were ready to begin.
Lord nga Sanjir was a jawab coordinator. Da Larung Garg, Tani Dansam Kambo Mondus, Tani Larung Garg Churgin, the Tartar Janagna Hajang, Tarkip Chimbo Songak, the Jirkin Kanlatin in Sarkose, Tangi Tabzanian. Tati so Tariga, Shunar Jirkin Mons Yore, Tati Nangayang, so Tari, Huerna, Tam Kambo Jimmy Pensongzina, Lo Parcher Nishi Merzakana, the Sanwi Go, Marna Mombos of Sortion Shiki, Girgan Mons of Sortion Shiki, T. Jimson Dachi. The near Nisitaka Kunguni Nayan, Kasak Gavlin, Jadam Mandrava Tignayan, the Semara Majime, Snyantop Damba, Dansan Huerna, Da America Motsuina Samaga, Ranga Semshik Chimbodan, Snyantop Damba, there's in the Huanger Damba. Zunlin Shiba, then Nimugo Tariga, Tenichig Nambas of the Samagara, Teni to her chicken in the Duntbag, Tata Zunlin Chicken door. That Titsun Javago, Dinirkamna, Chig Sarnam Kolo Bartavin, Yurto Chimbo Shonreda, Yenaya, Nisanotana, Chig, Matsu Murray, Chig Matsigan and Ramandra, Gandan Kang is in that Hua Majime. Flojon Shikidana, the next Janla Pantoko Shavala Jupkindi, Tada Zumba, then if Ganger the Chigida, Hacham Karchimbo Samgayo.
Last year, one news reporter asked me, there are so many of these scholars, these Khenpos, it means abbots, great scholars who are present in this monastic institution. And not only that, Tibetan Buddhism is spreading so widely around China due to their efforts. How is it that you were able to train so many scholars to become such excellent educators in this way? And I responded that, well, generally speaking, then the main reason for this is because of the efforts of my teacher, Khenpo Jigphun Rinpoche, who for some 20 years, when there was no permission to engage in religious study or practice, he privately continued to teach and train disciples. And so that's a long period of time for those disciples to be continuing their efforts in education in secrecy. And it's for that reason that later on, when things opened up, they were already in a position to be learned and to take on their own students and to continue this process on a grand scale. And so that's why it has spread out into the world and, of course, closely there in the proximity of China. And so the point that we look at, which allows for this to be possible, is this capacity to be confident and to be dedicated, which is very much like the founding fathers of the United States, from what I've been able to read and learn. There are the human qualities of being heroic, being enthusiastic about education and about the betterment of humanity. And if each individual can take on these kinds of commitments, then imagine what a better world we'd be able to live in. Because those masters were studying in a secret environment at the cost of their life. But yet they never gave up. And that's the same premise that this country was founded upon and so forth. And so to be able to have that level of confidence and commitment in order to improve the world, not only just oneself, but to be of benefit to everyone, I think this is a crucial point that we all need to begin to emphasize even more.
따뜻한데 오긴 나던 다 야나그니 기파가 나던 강당강이나 참마금 종내도 되는 야그런 박비야라 특이온데 야그런 박비 여가 양소 화른 날렌지 롭자치모 화른 날렌지 롭자치모 파치를 다 디르 비전에 정리 바야르면서 그 바리 연사래 다 디바르도 되는 자나나 하장 적슈 체와근 되는 샤르쇼크 롭자 단디는 거 되는 뭐뭐보즈도 소경시 용제 그러나 야나 공원도시나 다 당선종 공연나 되니 야나 야그르 화르날렌지 츠글강 되니 다 라마 추첨종 세기 콩 다리 되니 차드만도 와마스자바시르 따텔라속 바가 좀 몽즈도 되는 로종시 되니 다 마라용에 되니 담바르벤지 대동 자와그 야나거다 이진 제기즈고레 대양 다리거 데는 좀바 하정 쾌바 쳔보레 공이양 화르날렌자가 슬럭강송에 라마 롭체거랑 아테네다나 되니 추망보 땀 마라 야나가 용디더니 덤바 주기야 여말 다리 더 공거 시기야나에다나 더가 다 야나가 땀바르베르리 송은제 다콩 남바니까 그 수시사즈그 되니 야나금 쾌바 모가 야거그 추운데 되니 더가 마른 나은제이 체령어단 다 더가 추가 되니 다 야나그 코릭 쳔보텔라다리 달필 시시시너레.
Now, the source for both Tibetan and Chinese Buddhist traditions is India, is ancient India, and specifically the Nalanda Institution for Buddhist Studies, or the Nalanda University. And so according to Tibetan history, this is a place where the greatest masters of the tradition all studied, and including Guru Rinpoche and the great masters, and then also according to Chinese history, this is the place where the great masters of Chinese Buddhism also began and brought that knowledge back into China. So the Nalanda University was established in the 5th century, and it continued until the 12th century, some 700 years. During that time, masters such as Xuanzang, who lived during the Tang dynasty, went to Nalanda and brought his knowledge back to China, translated the texts into Chinese. Also Shila Bhadra, who was a pandit at Nalanda, was one of the masters that the famous translator from China, Yi Jin, studied under. This Yi Jin also went to Nalanda, received his instructions from the Shila Bhadra master, and then became a great scholar in the Madhyamaka philosophy, in the philosophy of pramana, logic, of Abhidharma, metaphysics, of Madhyamika Karika, and other great important crucial texts. And it's said that he brought some 400 volumes back to China and translated them all from Sanskrit into Chinese. And so these are two of the great masters who brought a lot of the Buddhist tradition into China from India.
Hwar nalentri gipa ta woyirge na kwerna jo adasha devjin de tam kanchin jiwan cho teni 까말라 실라 다더니 guru rinpoche yang tari lorji ga nana ta hwarnalan cha phimyo song re ta te yawa ta wok chujin mo zo ta hwarnalan cha le shong re tani jagar ga wand che ne na tam gumbo khlachap hwardan dawa chak ba te jin da na lohon chogji long chuji chak ba pe manjawa ga ta zawlang ga tang ga kheba chakchen zawlang mamang la semkum rigba ga tang ga shiji hajan chimbo jo da kheba namba tari khung nam tene nalen tani ge pare.
As for Tibetan masters and how the teachings came from India, of course they were brought by many of the Indian pandits who studied in Nalanda, such as Atisha, Dipamkara, such as Shantarakshita, the great Kempo, Kamalashila, and it's even said that Guru Rinpoche as well, Padmasambhava, studied at Nalanda University. There are histories about this that are documented. And so these masters brought those instructions from India, from the Nalanda University, into Tibet. In terms of the Indian lineages, which is also the important source that the Tibetan Buddhist masters draw upon, great masters, the likes of Nagarjuna, Dharma Kirti, Vasubandhu, and so forth, the most famous scholars of all time, the well-known masters or pandits of India, all of them were educated in Nalanda.
Testavi hwar nalan chani gyepa ga tene kheba choyen na chamai khelen gi songor khelen gi perna chechon de Stanford ga tene slop mai nan ja girgen nan ja ga tene zawlang ga ta na chama ga khelen gi da ngulen she thoya ga tinra ga marna ga chira ka ta tedang rawa chang ga tene yagar ga chu te chamai khelen gi songor te song chi ga jemsen chire zena ta chu de shirna tapa la super gore tapar gunre ta tapa lejang rigba so jimson so ta te shinre te na ngsu dari wogen na tang ga chulung de na zu de longdang rigba ga rigba ga chim ma zhe rigba ga zhe di da ta chan ri ge yang kemelen kame yen re rigba ga ma chim ne na de ni nga zu sangji bi chulung de yang na chul number ta ba men ga song re sanji ga mdog kap na chire zena the gerlong takam trinam ji the chakchut darwi servjin da langr shala ngai ka langshir inji kifshirman taksong je tani chakchut darwi servjin da na the takbr shala ngai ka langshir inji kifshirman ze ta ngi song da raptu shungay nanja chambay nanja changma ga ne na rigba ku takko garte rigba ku tagye da nilik da mardam bazi inna te sanji chomdan de song re yar kiba margo mara yig josar karti nilig yor jimsan ya yone na tani chernan be dari te nyamsum na chore ze te karsan de rang nga chu ga changding ga tawa te hajam thamba zu da song re te yindam chernan ba zo ina nanam kiba shartag re sanji ga song de la ongurtu rigba ga sha de na ta jimsan dan da mardan ga jimsan mardan na tani ta yig jo jimsan dan ne na nga chu se na nilig khelen ba shartag re ta te ngi te na ta tangrap ga dari ga da hajam thamba chabardeon nashok tariga samnodam thamba tendrazere samgayo.
So this I mentioned because this is something we can all take note of and gain confidence through, that in fact the source of Buddhism as it has spread in China and Tibet is this great monastic is this great university, Nalanda, in ancient India. And this is based on history and facts. And so it's similar to the way that we imagine and gain respect towards graduates of a great institution such as Stanford. Those who graduate from this university are respected by virtue of the fact that the source for the basis of their knowledge is known, well known to be absolutely authentic and excellent. And so this is important to understand that the source for the knowledge of Buddha Dharma is also similar to that. And it's important to have confidence, but even more than that, it's important to base one's confidence on reasoning, that which is actually logical. So, for example, it's always been the case in the study of Buddhism, which involves knowing the scriptures and developing knowledge about them, that logic is emphasized so that each individual can understand their own belief in terms of what Buddha taught. If it's logical, you accept it. And if it's not, it's something that you're not meant to be accepting. You don't just accept something based on faith and devotion, but it must be based on reasoning and logic. For example, there's one quote from the sutras that states, "All bhikshus, scholars, like the finest gold, refined through burning, cutting, and polishing, must receive my teaching, but not just only based on blind faith." So the Buddha himself clearly taught how important this process is. And it means that whether you're a monastic, whether you're a householder, all those who are interested in the study and practice of Buddhism need to analyze the meaning of what they're doing and reach their own conclusions. If it's illogical, don't practice. Let it go. If it's meaningful, accept it and embrace it. Because if it's something that has meaning for you because you have analyzed it and been able to accept it within your own mind as something that you truly believe in, then you'll be able to embrace it wholeheartedly. And this is very much concurrent with that which is interpretable on a conventional plane. And this is how success occurs. So it needs to be based upon logic and reasoning. And that's very much in harmony with modernity. Do you understand that? You didn't understand it? Kosong sagidu, go under chegidu.
다 오늘샤나 teni 산지지 추즈기도 녜때나 하정 잡무 르갸체와즈레 옛나양도 지 따빠 코나즈다 무바 대비전도 지 워시고 고아잠 디모고 마브작버 라나 수수 르바가 안에양도 딱시 짐모시 되네 딱시 짐모시디 남지가 내ርከ나 다 추즈근데 내라즈 인사 야크 사메다나 셈나라 토모 마임바 하정 니시 담보 다 디모즈도 제용제 다 데스다베 니시즈도 제이치로나 다 띠냐 셰르 띠냐 드네 왕론 추지 짐장제 드네 나추 산지 추왕도시나 왕터 따피 짐장다 왕론 추지 짐장제 왕보 뜨르워도 치레제나 잠바초고 드네 지금 하가 로지샤네 난자가 라마가 로지샤네 난자 다 테마토도 테인상거 제이다나 뜨거 텔라다리가 깁커시토노 또 왕터거지 왕터제 소다리가 지금 따박소고 셴제 드네 추 넘버 딱바도 왕론 추지 짐장제 릉거 르바가 따게다나 다 르바가 접지즈이나 켈렌 르바가 뭐 접지즈이나 케말레네 하늘기 요메가 싸발라다리가 트요지 단 님냐 드네 다리가
Given that the doctrine of the Buddha is so profound and far-reaching, it is meant to be investigated, basically, is what I'm saying. You don't just accept it based on faith and devotion. That's really not the main direction of this tradition. You're meant to use your knowledge, you're meant to use the power of mental analysis to reach your own conclusion about Buddha's teaching. And then, once you are able to accomplish that, a very extraordinary kind of confidence will be born within your mind. And that's referred to as prajna, or incisive knowledge. And it's something that the individual himself or herself must cultivate, which is that extraordinary inner confidence or prajna. incisive knowledge. And so this points out the two different categories of individuals, perhaps those who are considered to be of lesser acumen, who will study a history of a master or will study a history of a tradition and feel a sense of respect and devotion and mainly use a faith-bound mind to approach and engage, as opposed to those who connect with perfectly correct Dharma, meaning that their acumen is more keen, such that they are able to use the power of mental analysis and knowledge to determine the fundamental nature of truth as Buddha taught it, and connect with that, and to cultivate this extraordinary inner confidence, and that's called prajna. And in Buddha's teaching and the process of education, that is what we must emphasize principally. That's the pith.
네, 담주 침범 돌대 장지kel 정조르. 담 돌대 장가 정거 감나 첩제원제나. nga hajang ti tari tsukjute tari sem gawoyo ti nangna tari chusong rigbir nangshud samba jan tagda dukki warchit nopa met zionje daga kyabar rnye tang daga parur daga shuksan jin yongsan jibim tsanyit to zayidana tata mi shiribde yara chazir konro nar manba yar mumbim tsanyit chimos gan zer konre zena tani ta chur number tagba da yim da man tela tari yang yang da rigba ga khshapma jmo shi dana namji ga nerkabna mamchok bi tari ga tani ngishi ke mamchok bi tapa mamchok bi shirib mamchok bi tangenzan te top te top sondi tani ji 바로 고라보다는 디모가 그냥 끈거야나 노빠다 니르체 지영 메빠가 데스타베 니시케온레스 따티 지 시럽 나르솜바저거나 시럽 나만빔 찬이제 데나 맞춘다나 나출라 짐직시케요도 그 거거야 만보요온제 데니 로마야 만보요온제 치 넘버 촐라 레바 치레제나 치르도 추쇼가 따빠다나 가와야 가 체가 다 니시 타까 장된 거고네 랑거 르바 때 외슈시 시럽때 외슈시 있다나 근데 추 넘버 딱바가 흑당타데 롱무랑가 와르다 근데 짐직시에 로종시네나 난지가네 깜나 띠돈데 땅 오만 데레 삼지고 거기나 니마 전당 짜라다고 꾸아 yang tagba zi lon yu yu zhe. Ta ting nir kumna, zhan lan chab gu nan zhaga, zhan la zubar jia gu nan zhaga, zhang nyam si len gu nan zhaga, teni hloma la, hlo chi shi de, hloma jisin zan gu na, sha gang dang gang shi gu na yang, jik toba me bar tawa ger nire ma tok zhe me na, ta tang san jik cangma ga, jik tokba da, te tsum, dev zhin da na, rang yang jik, ta, ngsu, zhua ga hui zi yu nire, 데 키르나바 고노마 고네미 시르카규르 게시니메시다 미 라롱 능근 곤코르 tar sasu tanga lakchak zekiz go nareta to parchir girshigi mareba da kantaryan te zekiz go sonwanje ta sam momboz.
And so I'd like to share another quote on this subject, which comes from one of my favorite sutras, the Dodegen, the Mahayana Sutra Alamkara by Asanga, where it states that a mind that discerns the Dharma through reasoning, once certainty is gained within one's vehicle or belief system, there will be a complete absence of obstacles while on the path. Discovery of the extraordinary and disproof of the position of others serve as the function. Such are the characteristics of the maturation of unassailability, which means one is no longer open to attack through argument. And so this points out what I'm describing, to become unassailable in terms of one's commitment. That is fully qualified prajna, because it is the special kind of certainty that is born in the stream of mind of the practitioner. And that is the quality that will sustain the Buddha's doctrine through the test of time, as it were. And so among you there are many teachers, there are scholars, there are students, all of you should take this to heart, because from my personal experience and point of view, this is one of the key points for why the tradition is able to succeed to the present day in terms of this capacity to sustain prajna. Yes, faith is important. Believing and attraction is important. This must also be there, this would be there. But from a relative point of view, one must surely use the power of mental analysis to discern the meaning of what this doctrine is representing and to make contact with the depth of that meaning. And that would be like viewing the cloudless sky, correct? If one really understands the fundamental nature of truth, then you're in a position to teach others that truth. You're in a position to become a contemplative meditator, to practice and internalize and gain realization. You're in a position to take on students, disciples. There's no longer anything impeding you. Everything becomes possible. These days, on the contrary, we see many who are overwhelmed with conceptual proliferations and doubt and are unable to connect with this pith point of the need to cultivate prajna in terms of understanding the Dharma. And so for that, we have one proverb in our district of Tibet, and Khenpo said, well, probably the translators won't get it. Which is true. So he said the proverb, and those of you who understand his dialect probably understood. It holds the meaning of what he just said.
Takkan tariang ngome ngai matsega nyamnyong shordon yini na chu zegan de gen de nga chu matsega chowi chot hajang 판바 침보를 삼고요. 최산의 샤네나 지금 장롱 다 집대다나 되네 지금 참턴 짐턴 단 디모 초양 판바체레 되네 지금 총산의 샤나 다 신속당 캬버드 먹길그 자청 되네 쪽보 단 코리 내도 초 탐치다 되네 판바 야침본 종교도나 다 되네야 뭐 길근고 상로다나 다 난추즈기 되게 치레제나 마수 카르성 되는 거 상로고 녀자 몽보요레 치레제나 라라지 케라 랑코나 공도 삼노고 되네 지다 체르낫 동체르가 나타나 대전도 다 물라라다 되네 삼바데 뉴는 당선 샘금르바가 다 망급 주모도 기는 나밤 남몽어즈 척본레 되네 라라즈가 동섬가 다 레와 망보즈고 돼야 동섬가 되네 어장왕의 길이었다가 되네 양 삼바 망보전 다 딘지 녀자 몽즈고 디 가성되는 거 출르다 디모 따바장 메사차가 다 랑가랑 사티다나 되네 자창다리가 다 잔투르 제게다나 대전다나 다신속고 쳤다 근마다나 뜨금 촉좀바 년에전도 제망한 조지 되네 신속거나 또 망보즈도 용디데 되네 다 추즈는 긴디 랑아양 데치 전제다나 되네 장근 순코리잉 데라양 지금 코리 데치 담바즈도 전교원도 니버 장가야나 참에 냠뉴고도 고고원제 되네나 회랑 행원이나 되네 야나가 되네 지금 시험 봐요 몽보즈가 특요래 대전도는 지금 랑커거 담뭐 파르바 시르던 거 몽보즈가 특권제다 있나요 고수 추 마비점을 갑나 다 세미나 등을 하전 첨보요다 추대 로종 시대 냠스 람이 갑나 다 멋지게 지금 등을 강 있나라나 때 지금 당는 탑교 그더니 활동 약거제다 참마가 된자들이 저렇게온제 다 뜨있나 치르남바 소이나 지금 개바이나자 되네 시고이나자 롬보이나 참마가 니 돈덕대 상록당고 삼고
In my own life's experience, I've seen just how beneficial and valuable the Buddha's doctrine is for the life of a human being, just how much benefit it can bring. It is phenomenal. Of course, there's the capacity to, from a broader sense, benefit the world. this can spread out and is spreading out to benefit much of humanity, to bring more peace and more well-being. But even within one's own domain of existence, this is, of course, going to produce far-reaching benefit for Dharma communities, for the family circle, with friends, and for the environment. All these aspects of life that affect the environment that we live in and those that we associate with will benefit from the presence of the Buddha Dharma and the propagation of the Buddha Dharma. This is for sure. Particularly these days, we find so many people who are suffering mentally, who have material abundance, but they have excess mental issues, which might seem to be somewhat unnecessary, but yet they are there. They are completely depressed. They suffer from anxiety. They suffer from stress, and they suffer from loneliness, and they're suffering tremendously because of having no direction to turn to, having no faith or connection with the Buddhist teachings or a spiritual direction. They will divorce easily. Their lives will turn to becoming desperate. They become thieves, robbers, even murderers. And they may even turn to the taking of their own life, suicide. And so, actually, because we see how much of humanity is suffering in this way and how that's affecting the environment, it becomes all the more important to understand how that can be reversed by learning about the Buddha's teachings. And in China, I noticed that those ordinary people who don't have any Dharma in their life are definitely the ones who are suffering the most. And so we reach out to them, and once they learn about the different methods that they can apply to their condition and their situation, they're able to reverse their suffering, they're able to achieve more confidence, and they're able to actually make strides of benefit in the direction of well-being in a very short period of time. And so I think this is very important for all of us to consider.
다 니마 차시랑랑에 아메리카네 테니 카차즈 고쇼 지도 치레제나 다 추바 z그 켐네 테니 그런 거 자창 거 뭐즈셔 송레제 테니 디고 너그로도 더 추아 추르가 지그 답바다는 디모 요사마레 다디 뭐드셔 송디 테니 더 그런 거양 세미나 등으로 요래 테니 너그로고 세미나 등으로 요온제다 그런라 추가 지금 냠는 요기वर 답거네 등을 때점 다리 첨부 만들게세 되네 잠바텔라 다 추 냠는 메뉴 답거네는 다 인치민치미 그 손득나 마토제만나 빼 등을 첨부 넣게세 다 때등 잡아가 나서 맞수 워이르 연난자가 야이르 연난자가 하창모 요래 되나 ngsu mtsende ji jirga nanchi laso bagar dungur hajang mombozu njongji yonje tenir namba 2 chuluk khen yang rong malen yang rong kang tariang rang li thok ne la njam jagar dungur dum jongdi te dungur de ji ganji shi dan tene tat ta dungur chzer gonro dungur tanglen zer konan jaga dungur lamchir zeida 추근나나 냠는 mombozu yonre 단 드충오네 지 ರಂ거 리포양 대탕양 세명 다리가 대탕 임베 내급나 다 추쇼고 돈당 공당 가래라 로종 시기잔데나 당상다리 상당 곰지 난자가 잠판거 샹칩거 심 곰네 나란자가 마임 바그는 똥바니 그따와 단 드추 곰에 키론디 단 오네 지 matse chok one sar takchut mataba momboz da netene tangsang tariga momboz ga takchut tab yonare de ne na ji namba so muba yona dip shoga tariga jimjig dan nyamle shiro je garte muba mechi janzi na ya 지금 더 지 le labo go gne na 지금 통총 시 차즈다나 대 인사 말에 치레제나 당아 데 아메리카 글로tra momboz ga sonenda 콩나바가 때니 망보가 다리가 출그 돈데라 냥네 약보 다리 시더양 하장 망보야가 다 때니 야나라서 바 당상 잠봉는 그 강당가이나 차버듬 쾌반도 주이나 시옹보가 지금 소화되라 레와 양딱바즈 공모도이다 난 샘거 땅거 대와다 난 샘기 다리가 때니 지금 더가 딴는거 돈덤 그 대완데 지금 참마가 그냥요 비티르브스가 특이온제 대나 넘버 수지 고급도 마셔르이 타다 존는 시기도 가르침보레 삼고
I heard a story about one family here in America where their precious daughter died, and it was a devastating loss, of course, for the mother and the father. But in the case of the mother, because she had Dharma experience and was a long-time practitioner of Buddhism, she is able to apply that practice to the situation and gain some peace of mind and some mastery over the tremendous pain of her loss. And yet for the father, because of not having any association with Buddhist practice or anything to draw from, he just struggles with the surge of emotions day in and day out. And so there were very different results from this crisis for the two of these parents. And it is something that's very poignant for all of us to take stock of, because whether you're in Tibet or China or America, wherever you are, it's really all the same. It's the human condition that we must suffer from birth, old age, sickness, and death. The rivers of suffering will affect us all. They do affect us all. And so whether you believe in Dharma, Buddhism, or the spiritual direction or not, you have to find some means through which to pacify the suffering so that you have some mastery of your mind, so you can rest in a state of peacefulness and not be completely overwhelmed. And so this is something that affects you physically, affects you mentally, and that's why those who have the tools are going to be in a much better position than those who do not. And in Dharma, there are many tools, there are many methods to be employed in this training, such as contemplative meditation, such as cultivating the bodhicitta, thinking about how you can be of benefit to others more than yourself, or ascertaining the view of emptiness and identifying the true nature of reality, so that with your mind you can look through into the true nature of what's really occurring. And these methods, these tools, will definitely be of benefit to you in your life over and over again, so that you can turn around adversity and bring it to the path of life. So if you wish to do this, or even if you don't wish to do this, it's up to you. But from my point of view, there are so many students who are practicing in this way, who are going to be benefiting from this. And in China, for example, these days there are many scholars who are no longer emphasizing the outer rituals of the Buddhist tradition, but are rather turning to the emphasis of the inner mental development. And so that's why they're coming more to this tradition of Tibetan Buddhist practice, because it points out the absolute meaning of the Dharma, and that this is something they can get a hold of and really use and accomplish inner peace in their immediate lifetime. So I think that we should all exert ourselves more in this direction. This is very important.
Tanim jigdo rewa nyakchigyo. Te rewa de chirezena ta shirna lopcha dimogo nanga yongno to chama tani shiung go ta kaina shiung hajang tombore. Ta yinayang mu mombozu de rando yishit rando tsabo hoina nga shigbozu yona nga rang chwa kipozu ga rur samjida. Nga rang kebazu yona ngi chi xartut mombozu shong shi chokko samje. Tani nga chi gerkung go chi go wangcha chimbozu yinena ngi chi kangsum khalo gir chokko. Tap samji go teni rang khuna yara 지금 토탑 체탑 냔탑 디모즈가 못순 버 ke nambala mawa tertawi korku yopi nerkabna teni ji rang 시온 도 초가 다 지금 뭐 워로 뭐 지금 시온 거 워위 lumbo 데소라 판토제다 랑거 지금 환저다 기르지 데소 식보요네나 teni khasa tera 지금 타콥 그 회나 또 아프리카나라 대전도나 다 이슬란드나 티모 냠타바 뭐뭐요라 다 대덕 초다리가 판토제다나 teni 지금 랑아 지금 왕차 깔라 간스요네나 teni 냠총다나 조메 teni 지금 냠타바가 문데초 라타리가 시작던 군도 시키 다 띠라 속바가 너나 ngasu msi na rangrang ngo yondan janle pardo shimbaz yotita ti yondan de weshi da na deni rangle mamba jamba chola pan toje da hajang takchen ge chuge yang nyangdon zgen nare namba chola tari ge mao ne kapna samlu kapshuk zerkuna jag matse ge de kapshuk tatsa da khzu janla panban de khzu rubje de hajang karchi gore de mayen ba rang khona tsardon donge ndo ji roa mi lug tamju soga nanayang ji dorng chembo top고요 말에 당성 잠bolong 그 갑쇼고 nanayang ji tela tari ngunzun yehoz zengyo 말에 대나 닝운이나 레와 녀직지게도 되니 지 잠판 그 샤워 줍지고 타다 되니 좀바 시기대 마요 많지 이제도 막도 잠바 지금에 관전치
In conclusion, I have one wish that I would like to present to all of you, having an opportunity to speak here in this prestigious university. Obviously, when one graduates from a university such as this, then there should be the motivation to continue to serve the global community and ease the suffering of the world. And oftentimes there's the tendency to simply want to benefit oneself. We humans succumb to that selfish direction easily, especially if we do have a higher position, if we have a degree from a great university, then we may want to go on to increase our own legacy, to invent things through our own educational skills in order for improving our fame and our gain from a personal point of view. I would like to discourage all of you from that kind of a direction because in graduating from or studying in a prestigious university such as this, then definitely one must take that and bring that education out into the world in the best way possible, to be able to help ease the suffering on a global scale in your country, in other countries, in third world countries, whatever the case may be, to ease the physical and mental suffering of those who are in need in Asia, in Africa, wherever you can engage in philanthropic activities to whatever level you can. This is the kind of aspiration that you should have. And that would be in harmony with the Mahayana tradition, to do what you can, since you have been fortunate to have these accomplishments, to bring that out into the world and help the needy, help the weak, help the poor, to improve the planet, to become a visionary who is caring about the future of the globe and other living beings, the inhabitants, and not just only focusing in a selfish way. Of course, that would be the correct Mahayana Buddhist practice, but even from a worldly point of view, this would be the kind of advice that most mentors would give to their students. And that would always be deserving of great respect and admiration. And so in this modern world of strife and great suffering, I implore you all to bear in mind how much you can make a contribution to improve our planet and all of those who live here together.